did that, I was like, oh shit. It'd be cool if I popped it again. What if you're like so cool, you're like keeping it up in the air?
Yeah, like
but with the revolver.
Dude, those guys that do them cowboy competitions, they do that shit. It's nuts.
Guys, Murph's here, and today we're going to be talking about this. A Sears Model 200 set up as a pistol grip only shotgun. Now, in order to talk about this gun, we're going to talk about a little bit of history and then a little bit about the history and provenance of this particular shotgun. Now, we're going to have to talk about let me set this aside real quick. We're going to have to talk about the Sears and Roebuck Company yet again. The same Sears that is closing down locations all across the country right now. Now, we previously talked about this company with the JC Higgins Model 20 and the JC Higgins product line of shotguns. We're actually picking back up at the end of the JC Higgins product line. So if you haven't seen that video on the Model 20, I'll actually annotate that link in the description. Check that out after you get done with this if you want some of the prehistory. So in the early 60s, Winchester came out with the Model 1200 shotgun. And it was actually a commercial success for being a very lightweight shotgun. Well, Sears took notice and decided that they wanted to launch a new product line, and they wanted the Winchester Model 1200 with Sears markings, as usual, featured in their new product line. So they got a hold of it for two different product lines. The Sears budget line, Sears branded budget line, and then the Ted Williams a little bit better line of shotguns. And that's literally the difference between these two shotguns, a Ted Williams or a Sears, is that the Ted Williams will have nicer fit and finish, better wood, and adjustable choke tubes, whereas the Sears Model 200 is a 12 or 20 gauge shotgun with a 28-inch fixed choke barrel. Those are the differences between those two models, and they were built by Winchester. Both of them were built by Winchester, provided the Sears. And they sold these guns up until they stopped selling guns, Sears, I mean, in the 1980s. So that's where these models come from, and if you take a look at this shotgun, you will notice that it is not a 28-inch fixed choke sporting gun. It is very much so a defensive-minded pistol grip shotgun. So the provenance for this particular firearm, I was helping close down a gun shop many years ago. These people had entered into a business relationship with a friend of theirs, and then it started going south. There were some bad business practices going down, so they decided that they were going to withdraw their merchandise from the storefront and start fresh elsewhere. So I helped them, me and a bunch of other people helped them move about 75% of the merchandise out of the store. Now, that sounds like a lot unless you actually saw it, because that was some terrible stuff. There was a lot of good stuff. There was a lot of like good guns and good equipment and stuff like that in there, but there was also mountains of rubbish. Just the most eclectic collection of just random firearms-oriented things stacked in corners, covering old counters, just disarray across a whole bunch of manufactured and homemade shelving units and stuff like that. It was bad, honestly. I could definitely see why that business relationship turned sour from a storage standpoint as well as business practice standpoint. So while I was going through this just dumpster fire of a rubbish heap, legitimately guys, it looked like a poorly organized Goodwill for firearms related things. And we were just taking truckload after truckload of this stuff out of there. Well, as I was going through there, I came across a Sears Model 200 receiver. And it occurred to me as I was going through things that if I kept an eye out, we might just be able to make a shotgun out of this. And that's what we did. All right, so right off the bat, let's go ahead and let's talk about the parts that I found and sourced for this gun. This is an 18.25-inch Winchester Model 1300 Defender barrel. Now, you might be sitting there going, wait, hold on, you just introduced another model. Keep in mind, guys, that the Winchester Model 1200, the Sears Model 200, and the Winchester Model 1300 have a large number of interchangeable parts. They're all basically the same gun. The 1300 is the most different just because it had all of the top of the line upgrades for the 70s into the 80s, whereas these guns kind of show a little bit of an older type feature set. So that includes things like on this particular barrel, the 1300 barrels would have been rated for steel. Now, this is not a duck gun by any means, so that's not necessarily a thing I'm concerned about. But in addition to that, these are also 2 3/4 and 3-inch shell chambered. However, the Model 200 and the Winchester Model 1200 were only ever chambered for 2 3/4 inch shells. So this gun will chamber a 3-inch shell. I would not be so bold as to fire a 3-inch shell out of it. And that's just my preference. It's not something I'm willing to mess with, especially in a pistol grip only gun. That's a lot of recoil. Now, it's a plain barrel, of course, because this is a defensive gun, and it does have little teeny tiny bead on the end of the barrel, which is more than enough for what this gun would actually be used for. Now, we do have a 4+1 magazine, and this is an ATI 4-stock. Now, originally this had a wooden 4-stock, and I eventually dumped that because I wanted something with some rails on it. Now, my preference is not to mount lights on anything that moves on a firearm. However, there's only so many options for this particular model, and I was kind of tired of looking. Originally, this gun came with 2 Picatinny sections. I removed the side that I'm not using because these guns recoil a lot. 12 gauge recoils a lot when it has a buttstock, let alone when it doesn't have a buttstock. And I wanted to make sure that I removed any type of protuberances that might catch on my hand under recoil. I've seen fingers split that way on like sling swivels and stuff like that. Not worth it to me. So ditched that. Coming back to here. So an interesting thing, and I can actually roll in a picture about this, is that the Winchester Model 1200/1300/ Sears Model 200 has a rotating multi-locking lug bolt, very similar to that of a AR-15. And they did that because this receiver is their alloy never rust receiver. This is extremely lightweight, which is why I love the Winchester Model 1200s. I own multiple. But it presents a locking issue. Now, up to this point, a lot of shotguns had steel receivers, and you could have a single monolithic locking lug that more or less latched into the receiver, and that was going to contain all of your pressure. That's fine. You can do that against steel. But steel against alloy is not a good long-term result when we're talking about pressure. So now Winchester had to solve how to get this nice, lightweight, thin receiver to not blow up in your face. And what they did was they locked into the only other steel portion of the gun that the bolt would be able to reach, and that was the barrel. So that rotating locking lug locks into the barrel. It takes all of the stress off of the receiver and more or less guarantees that you're not going to have any pressure type incidents incorporated with the chamber and receiver of the gun. Now, other people have solved that problem in different, probably simpler overall ways from a manufacturing standpoint, but I really appreciate that Winchester took that extra step to make sure that this was like bomb-proof. I like safety upgrades like that. In addition to that, the firing pin in this bolt actually has an anti-creep spring associated with it, which makes it more difficult for the gun to go off should it be dropped. Again, just little things like that I really appreciate. Now, the bolts on all of these shotguns, Ted Williams, Sears, and Winchester, are jeweled, which, I guess it was just a simple thing for Winchester to be able to do it on all of the models. It doesn't really enhance anything that I've ever noticed, at least. Coming back to here, we have a crossbolt safety, which is in my favorite location, which is in front of the trigger guard. It makes it very natural to move to the trigger after having turned off your safety. That is my preferred setup when it comes to safeties. However, on the other hand of that, as usual, the slide release is in the worst location. You just can't win on pump action shotguns, guys. There's only so much space for these things. So the slide release is located at the rear and off side of the gun. And that is my least favorite location for a slide release. Ideally, I would like everything in front of the trigger guard, but that never works out. So it's always one or the other. Or pretty much always one or the other. Coming back to here, I have another, I think it's an ATI pistol grip. which is branded for the Model 12 or 1400 shotguns, Model 1200 or 1400 shotguns. Now, this is where you run into an issue with trying to match things up to the Sears Model 200, is that they don't take Winchester 1200 furniture very well. And there is just a little bit of a ridge where this plastic doesn't perfectly cap off the end of the receiver. However, it's not like debris is going to get inside of it, and when you consider that all I have invested in this gun is the effort that it took to build it and also load up those trucks, I'm fine with it. I'm completely fine with it. Now, coming back to here, I also managed to source this shell bandolier to use as a sling/shell carrier. Now, keep in mind, guys, this gun is unloaded. It is coming out of my home defense setup, and I didn't feel like taking all these shotgun shells out of there. So it's also going to help me demonstrate a point here after a little bit, so just live with it. Okay, now, mounted up here on my Picatinny rail is a TLR2 HL pistol light. Now, also, oddly enough, I got this light while another gun shop was going out of business, and this was their display piece, their demo piece. It actually even says demo on the light. I picked this up for super cheap, and then I also ordered because it didn't come with any of the inserts to be able to fit it to any number of pistol rails, so I had to order those, and that was a super cheap investment to have a really good light. Now, being the HL, this is selectable between laser, light, and laser light, as well as having a strobe function. I love these lights. They're a really great value. Now, shooting this gun. Let's go ahead and roll in a little bit of shooting footage, and then we'll talk about it. All right, guys, shooting this gun with anything more than birdshot is extremely uncomfortable. And when you talk about trying to shoot slugs out of it, it's kind of pointless. And let's talk about why that is. And that is recoil. Already, pistol grip shotguns have a lot of recoil because it's still a shotgun, and now you're transferring all that recoil into the web of your hand. Now, take into account that this is a lightweight pistol grip shotgun, and it's only beating up your hand that much more. You'll see a lot of times in movies and stuff like that of people bringing this up to their eye to be able to sight down it and engage that way. And also, if you surf around the internet for a little bit, you'll find an awful lot of videos of people doing that and the gun jumping out of their hand, because you've got to death grip this gun in order to make sure it stays where you want it and doesn't come back and pop you in the face. So with that being the case, the vast majority of the time you see this advocated as being fired from the hip so that you get more of your body in line with the gun to help soak up recoil, which is why I incorporated a laser light combo so that I could still properly line up on a target. Now, keep in mind, guys, shotguns are not like how they're portrayed in the movies and video games in general, where you just send this like wall of lead downrange every time you pull the trigger on a shotgun. For close range type engagements, which this gun typifies as being meant for, this still needs to be placed onto the target. You're not going to be able to just point in their general direction and be able to hit them. You're going to have to actually line up on them. Now, with that being the case, you're going to want to give yourself some help to be able to aim on them. Now, the vast majority of the time you see these shotguns used in a tactical type situation is for breaching operations. And that's about it. You could maybe try to handle these out of a vehicle, but I wouldn't consider that to be like the best use for them. And I would purely hold this down for very close range type setups, which is what I use it for. No further than engaging across a room. Now, the shell setup. Let's talk about this. I would implore you that if you're looking at using some sort of bandolier like this, you not attach it to your gun. The pros of this bandolier is that I can fit an entire box of shotgun shells on it. The cons of this bandolier is that I can fit an entire box of shotgun shells on it. This is extremely heavy and is extremely cumbersome to move around and wrangle and be able to just like live with. Now this sits in a corner the vast majority of the time, so I'm not that worried about trying to walk around with it, but trying to take it to the range and stuff like that, this is incredibly uncomfortable to work around. Now, how's its shooting performance been overall? Well, and something that I've noticed that has been typified across this entire family of shotguns has been that it's kind of ammo finicky, which is unfortunate because I do not like shotguns that are picky when it comes to ammunition. I like ammunition transparency as much as I can. However, I found an issue with them, and they seem to most definitely center around this load right here. This is not a Federal advertisement, unfortunately. This is the Federal Game Load 2 3/4 7.5 shot low brass target shell. And I train with this a lot because this gun is rather uncomfortable to shoot. So when I train with it, I generally use low brass and the occasional high brass bird shot. Now, this stuff sticks in the chamber whenever it is that I use it. And actually, this is a partial box because I was trying to shoot it out of another Winchester Model 1200, and it kept, I would get one round and then I would have an extraction issue. What I've noticed, and what I think the issue is that anytime I do finally get the shotgun shell extracted, the rim is almost completely pulled off of the plastic hull. I think the problem is that these chambers in these shotguns are kind of tight, and that steel rim, when it expands, is more or less locking up against those lugs and not allowing them to move properly. So that's what's causing it to more or less get pulled out of, like, the shotgun shell to be deconstructed post-firing as you attempt to extract the cartridge. I have also noticed this in some high brass shells where I could actually see the extractor mark all the way down the side of the shell where it was cutting into the shell while I was trying to extract it. That's just something that I've noticed. Is that actually the case? Is it maybe overpowered extractors or something like that? I don't know. It's something that I'm paying closer attention to because it turns out that I have a lot of this Federal ammunition lying around. So it's something I'm going to get a lot of opportunity to test, but so far this is the issue that I've had. I have not noticed it as much in some other Federal target loads. Just this box specifically has not been feeding in my Winchester Model 1200 shotguns. So just throwing that out there. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying keep that in mind that these may be a little finicky. Now, what are my kind of closing thoughts on this shotgun in particular? Well, when you consider how much I have invested in it, I've actually gotten a lot out of it as far as utility is concerned, and I don't even use it that much. It's more to say that I haven't got a lot invested into the gun. I want to do a video where we compare pistol grip only shotguns against literally any other type of shotgun in defensive type scenarios and stuff like that, to kind of really lay out the fact that these are very niche shotguns. These fulfill a very specific use and are not end-all be-alls. And that's concerning to me because I see a lot of people advocate for these for home defense and stuff like that. We've always got to be careful about what we advocate for because everything has a specific set of parameters that it's going to work well in. And I think that's going to bear me actually having to take this to the range for a dedicated video to show where advantages and disadvantages fall short with this particular shotgun. But up until that time, guys, I guess I will catch you later. Have a good day.